Hello and welcome to a slightly different episode of Under the Radar. If you're a longtime listener to the show, you might remember that back last December when I launched Workouts Plus Plus, I kept a kind of a launch day diary of the experience that I think ended up turning into a pretty interesting episode. I'm honestly, personally very glad to have recorded it, just because so often for these kinds of things, you have this experience, and honestly, with independent development, you often have the experience, sort of by yourself, largely, and you never really get the benefit of kind of recalling and remembering and just, having this memento going forward. And so it was very great to record it. And so today, this is December 12th, 2017. About a year later, I'm launching the 2.0 update of Workouts Plus Plus. And as a result, it seemed like a good opportunity to record my experiences again. And hopefully this is interesting and somewhat instructive. It's a funny thing launching a 2.0 update as opposed to a version 1. I've re-listened to a bit of my first launch day diary for Workouts Plus Plus, and there's a lot of apprehension and a lot of the sense of complete unknown about how people will react to it, about how it's going to go. It felt like there was a lot more writing on it. A 2.0 update, it feels different. Like, this is a substantial update, and it's something that I've been working almost exclusively on for like 3 or 4 months now. It's a large, substantial investment, of my time. But I'll say that I'm less worried about it than I was for version 1, just because I know the core concept sort of works. That in terms of, I have the experience of Workouts Plus Plus 1.0 to tell me that. And then I think also I'm just feeling slightly liberated by the fact that, as I discussed, I think on 3 or 4 episodes ago, Free with Benefits, I think was the name of the episode, I made the decision that for this update, I'm just making the app completely free. That I'm using this more as a marketing tool to expand awareness of my other apps, to just in general try and see if I can make the app broadly used, or get wide acceptance and focus on those things rather than on trying to in the short term make money. And that is incredibly liberating. That it's a little weird to not have the sense of if the day goes really well. Often there would have been some kind of, it's like this direct payday, but it's quite liberating in some ways to just say, like, whatever the day is, like, this is just step 1 in trying to build a big, broad audience for the application. And hopefully, if the app does really well today, that's a good step towards that process. But beyond that, it's quite liberating to just be able to say, you know what? Let's see what happens. And if it doesn't quite go right, I guess, I'll just continue to sort of adjust and, redirect the app, add new features, try marketing things. I have the opportunity to do that in kind of a fun way. But we'll see. It's currently about 5:43 a.m. It's a bit early, but I've started working kind of early recently. And so I'm just doing a little bit of work before the launch gets started. I expect to launch the app just before 9 o'clock or so, or at least that's when I'll hit go in iTunes Connect, and then probably a little after 9, once everything has propagated, hopefully, I'll actually start to promote it and talk about it. So at this point, I'm just going through and editing my sort of launch blog post where I outline the features, and starting to think of any kind of checklist items that I need to do. Because one thing I've learned from doing several launches is it's pretty important for me to have a checklist of things that I want to do, and think about that now when I'm not kind of in the anxious, excitable phase, and just write them all down. So right now, I'm just going to be editing blog posts and thinking of things I might want to do later on today, and then I'll check back in a little bit as we get closer to when I hit go. It is now 6:35 a.m. And this is where the day transitions into kind of a I guess, a true indie mode, because as much as I'm excited and focused on launching the app, I am now going to be transitioning to family stuff and like getting my kids breakfast and getting them ready to go off to school. And then I'll go and drive my son to school and drop him off and then come back. And it is one of those things that I feel like is both lovely and complicated about being an independent developer, where your personal life and your professional life are so close together. I try very hard to have them not overlap too much and get intermixed, and that can cause lots of problems. But they're very close together. I'm finishing up this update. It's a pretty big day for the business overall. But, I'm about to just go and make breakfast and do that kind of stuff. And then I'll come back and I'll do some work. And it's kind of one of those funny things about being in this role where you're never really away from work and you're never really away from home. And it is nice, I will say, on a day like this to have that balance, to have that thing that's grounding me, that, my kids know we're launching an app today and they're kind of excited and, motivating and encouraging about that. But at the same time, it's not something that they're really understanding. Like, it's still just another day for them in a lot of ways, and they're gonna, we're just gonna go have breakfast like we normally do, have a normal morning, and then I'll be coming back to work, and it's a significant day, and that grounding effect is definitely very nice, and helps me from getting too in my head or too concerned or worried about what the day is going to look like.
All right, it is 8:29 a.m. I am sitting in traffic coming home from dropping my son off at school. A lot of mixed feelings, because essentially as soon as I get home, I will be launching the app. So I'm thinking about it a lot. It's probably worth mentioning briefly. The reason it might sound different beyond just being me rather than me and Marco this week is I'm recording on a mobile recorder, just so that I can do things like this, that it can be a diary throughout the day wherever I am, not just every moment that I'm stuck at the desk. So if it sounds a little different, if the quality isn't quite what you're used to, understand that's what's going on there. I also thought it would be an interesting, probably a good time to talk a little bit about the update itself, and why I'm excited about it and what's happening with this update. So Workouts++ 2.0 is the three main features, like the marquee features, are watch-based podcast playback, location tracking, and swim support, as well as there's a whole bunch of other stuff. But those are the big three. And in a lot of ways, it's kind of finishing the app that I started with Workouts++ 1.0. Because in Workouts++ 1.0, a lot of those things just weren't really possible. Things like swimming support wasn't great until watchOS 4.0. Location tracking just wasn't possible before 4.0. And podcast playback support was sort of possible before, but wasn't really quite as compelling until we got the LTE Apple Watches. So those are now sort of the big main features. And in addition to that, there's just a whole host of other stuff. It has Siri integration, a new design. I did a lot of work on the charting that I do in the app to display your heart rate and your speed over time. There's a lot of other kind of things like that. But those are the three main features. And it's funny because I think the thing that most people are probably, like in the initial audience of the app, my guess, this is entirely speculative, but my guess is that most people are going to be interested in the watch-based podcast playback. Because it's a really tricky problem to solve. It's kind of hard. And it's anytime I'm able to solve a problem that ostensibly isn't solvable, I always, am excited about that. I was able to, because of a lot of the weird mechanics of how workout apps work, I was able to get podcast playback working pretty well on the watch. In practice, I imagine the actual number of people who use the app for podcast playback is going to be relatively small. In my own experience, it's really, really, really nice in a really narrow use case to have podcast playback on the watch. Things like going out for a run. It's delightful if you have an LTE watch to just go out and run with just your watch. No phone, you just put your AirPods in and off you go. Like that's delightful. But that's a relatively small number of people who I think are going to be using it for that purpose. Like the location tracking and the swimming support is actually probably much more important to most of my customers. But think it's going to be funny today because I think more attention is going to come from the sort of the niche feature rather than the core feature. But I mean, part of why I made the niche feature is because it's good for press, and also it's something that I just wanted for myself. When I started off making podcast playback for Workouts++, I started off doing it not really expecting necessarily that I was going to ever be able to ship it, that it would ever be good enough to actually release, because I thought there was going to be too many weird caveats and quirks and things I had to work around. But in the end, it actually did work out, and it's shippable and it works. But I created it mostly for myself, for those rare situations where I'm going to be, want to go for a run and don't want to carry my phone, because I really hate having like the little pouch that I have to, strap onto my arm or onto my waist, and so it's quite nice to not have that. But yeah, so that's kind of the core features, and then it's just like a lot of other stuff. Like, it's one of these updates where, I probably added, 40, 50 features in total over the course of the update, and in aggregate, it's, it dramatically changes the way that the app feels and the way that the app behaves. But no one of them, other than those three, are these kind of like huge, big marquee features. But anyway, so I'm driving home. I'll be home soon, and then I'll be flipping the switch. So, unless it's a little bit scary. Like, I'm delighted and excited to go home, but I'm also a little bit nervous because once I flip the switch, then it's out in the world. And in kind of a weird way, it's sort of like, I don't know, it's like asking someone out on a date or something, where you have to sort of put yourself out there. Like, anytime I launch an app, it's not just this thing that, is between me and with some of my close friends. Now, everyone is going to see it and I hopefully like it, but maybe not like it. And so those kind of feelings are really complicated. But, anyway, I'll be home soon, and we'll go from there. All right, so it is now 8:55 a.m., and I'm here with my wife.
Hi.
I was going to ask her if she wanted to push the button. She's been the very supportive wife who's borne with me as I've gone through this update, so it seemed only right that she would push the actual release this version button.
I'm actually very honored and excited to do this because I have never shipped an app before.
There you go. You're about to ship it.
Here we go. Da da da. Release this version. I see the spinning. This is very exciting.
Lots of spinning. And there you go. What does that say?
Whoa, ready for sale. High five. Da,
Yeah.
Da, 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 da. And they're off.
The incredibly anticlimactic part of this is it's like, and then nothing happens. At least not right away. So now we just wait and see for how long it takes to propagate through the App Store. It is now 9:12 a.m. and I'm just sitting here refreshing the App Store page in a browser. I used to do this in iTunes, then iTunes got rid of the App Store, so now I'm just sitting here in a browser, refresh, hoping that it comes out and hits the App Store soon so I can sort of get out of waiting mode. But yeah, otherwise, this is the weird part of the day where you hit go and then you have no idea how long it'll be until it's actually go time. It is 9:22 a.m., still frantically refreshing. 9:38 a.m., getting close to an hour now since I hit go, and I'm still waiting. All right, it is now basically 10 o'clock. Things are getting serious. I'm still waiting for it to propagate to the App Store, but I'm giving my command and my R key a rest I created a pingdom alert now for the App Store page. Just so once a minute it's checking it and will alert me when it's 2.0 finally appears in the App Store. Desperate times call for desperate measures. So this morning is not going at all how I expected it would be. So it's still not showing up in the App Store, and I would planned already to go and run a few errands and then go to the gym. At this point, I figured things would have settled down. So I'm still I'm going to go run my errands, go to the gym. I guess I could say I'm doing some field testing for Workouts++ during that, and then just wait and see. Hopefully I'll get an alert at some point that it's up. But yeah, not exactly how I expected my morning to go. Oh well. So it is now midday, noon, and still no sign of it appearing in the App Store. I've run all my errands. I'm at the gym about to go do a workout. If it'll either mean everything or nothing to you, that the workout I'm about to go do is a variant on a Fight Gone Bad. So I will be thoroughly worked out and I guess testing my app over the next hour or so. And then hopefully eventually it'll appear in the App Store and I can move on. So it's now 4 p.m. And I realize this does not make good radio whatsoever to just hear report after report of the app never propagating. But at least on the plus side, in a weird way, I've gotten a lot of reports that other apps are also having the same trouble. So it seems like I just picked a bad day, and the App Store is for some reason having a massive hiccup today and not updating and not propagating. So I don't really know what that means. The kind of awkward thing is at some point it'll just appear, and so like that might just be in the middle of the night, and I don't really know. But yeah, it's a bit frustrating. All right, it is now 5 p.m., and I guess I'm going to take a break from my vigil. I mean, I've been able to do a few other things work-wise today, but overall it's been a bit of a waste of a day so far. All right, it is 6:30 p.m., and finally progress. Many hours later, we finally have some progress. The app seems to be starting to propagate. I now have new screenshots, but old version text in the App Store, which makes me think that finally it's coming. The moment is finally here. It's a little awkward that it's 6:30 at night, but we'll just do our best. So I thought about it a while. It's about 6:54 now, about exactly what I was going to do. And I think what I've decided is I'm going to do kind of a soft launch tonight, just like a tweet, just putting it out there that, hey, the update's out. It includes some basic features. And then tomorrow morning I'll do kind of a more concerted push and effort. But I want to kind of just put it out there in the world that this update is there, it's available. And my thinking there is just I don't want to have anybody who is potentially thinking of linking to it or in press or something, feeling like it's kind of in this kind of this weird embargoed state. I'd rather just kind of say, hey, it's out there, but do my big push in the morning. I don't know if it's the right idea, and honestly, at this point, I'm just kind of exhausted. But that's what I've decided to do. So we'll do that and see where to go next. So it's now 7:54 p.m. The tweets are tweeted. Things are, going pretty well, I'd say. The reception insofar has been generally pretty positive and encouraging, which is lovely. It is kind of funny though, because I've been doing this kind of App Store stuff for so much longer now that I'm at a point where, while I'm excited about the launch, while it's it's a really fun and important part of the process, the actual importance of it to me is dramatically reduced compared to what it may have been a few years ago. Because while I know it's an important part of building an app's audience, the real test for the app and the real importance for the app is not how it performs in the next 24 hours. It's how it performs the next 24 weeks. And I'm making choices and directing things to hopefully allow it to be sustainable in the long term. So that tempers in a weird way my enthusiasm for today, because I realize that it's a long journey from here, but nevertheless, today going well is nevertheless very encouraging. I gotta say, real-time analytics are both the most wonderful and the most awful, terrible thing in the world. You might not know this, but if you go into the affiliate console, so if you have like a link to something in the App Store, you can create an affiliate link where you get a little commission, but mostly I use it so I can kind of keep track of where my links are coming from. And inside of that panel, there's a real-time tracker of clicks on those links, which is great, except it also just means that I'm just sitting here and have been sitting here for the last 5 minutes just watching this ticker go by, every time someone clicks on a link to Workouts++ in the App Store. So, wonderful,
but also terrible, certainly if I was trying to get some work done. All right, it is coming up on 10 o'clock at night. Things are settling down. It's kind of nice. I'm up later than I usually am. It's well past my bedtime, but I wanted to just sort of, be aware if there was any issues that jumped up. I am honestly kind of nervous about in the morning when I've had a lot of people who say, hey, can't wait to use it first thing in the morning for my morning run. Well, I've tested the app, as much as I can. I take it very seriously, the responsibility of people, recording their workouts in the app and expecting it to work flawlessly. And so, I'm a little nervous now, and we'll hopefully feel a bit better in the morning when I get a few reports back of things working correctly. But right now I'm just tired. Been up for a long time at this point. Had kind of a rough day, middle of the day anyway. But overall, things are going good. I'll check in the morning. I'm going to do my little publicity push and kind of move on to the next phase of things. It is now about 8:30 on Wednesday morning, so the day after the launch, I suppose. Things are good. Things went well overnight. I was up a little bit late, just responding to people on Twitter and just kind of getting a general sense of things and watching those cursed real-time reports. And overall, I'd say, things seem well. There's a couple issues around podcast import and transfer, but I always knew those were going to kind of be the rough edges. Honestly, I'm most glad that I haven't had any reports of things going on with, data loss or things like that. Like, that's an area that I will say, it's like the one thing I always remember when I was taking classes in college, and they would talk about sort of real-time systems and things where, it's like, a flight control software or something where you can't make a mistake because, then people will get hurt. And while I'm delighted that I don't work on any software like that, and I always kind of decided that I really just didn't want to go down that road, the closest thing to it in a weird way that I do is safeguarding people's workout data. That, I take it very seriously that people take their data very seriously. And, took a tremendous amount of effort to make sure that even if things go funny, like the app crashes or your battery runs out on your watch or whatever, the data is safe and you'll be able to get it back. So thankfully, so far, that seems to have worked. And I haven't had any, widespread reports. And, overall, the reception's been pretty good. Noticed that I was mentioned on 9 to 5 Mac and Mac Rumors, which I was not expecting at all, which was super cool. And it's always exciting when you just see your app mentioned in, something, a publication that you read normally, but, I had no expectation or guess that was going to happen. They just picked it up from somewhere else, I suppose. I hadn't reached out to them, so that was super cool. But yeah, now I'm about to publish on I have a blog post, and I'll do kind of a secondary push this morning, and then just kind of settle into it and, see where the app goes. All right, I'm going to wrap up this diary at this point. It's, the day after the launch, delayed as it was, and, things are settling down. I guess I have a few kind of closing thoughts and things that are just sort of the realities of launch. And, this diary didn't go exactly how I planned, but I think in many ways that's something that's interesting to discuss. Before I do that, though, I do need to mention that this episode was brought to you by Linode. Linode has fast, powerful hosting options for all of your Linux server needs, easy tools to get you set up and running, super, super fast with plans as low as $5 a month for a Linux server with 1 gigabyte of RAM in the Linode cloud. I use Linode. They're great. They have, fast, high performance servers in lots of data centers, great tools for managing them. And have, they can pay me to talk about them, but they can't pay me to use them. And I use them for all of my server needs. So they're just fantastic. As a listener of this show, if you sign up at linode.com/radar, you'll not only be supporting us, but also get $20 towards any Linode plan. They have a 7-day money-back guarantee, so nothing to really lose there. So linode.com/radar to learn more and take advantage of a $20 credit. Thanks to Linode for sponsoring this show. So some closing thoughts. I was trying to think of how I could wrap this up. And really, I think in many ways, the unfortunate but still meaningful lesson of this experience is making sure that you have, manage your expectations for something like this. That, the launch went well. It was picked up in places I was not expecting to be picked up. As best I can tell from initial sales and response, it went as well as I could have hoped for. Things are good. But I think it's often easy to end up with kind of like a movie in your mind, right? Like you end up with this expectation that is outsized to reality. And I think that's the reality of what happened to me in this case. And, things like it being delayed and, planning around a launch at a particular time and that not happening. But, that's life. That's what's going to happen. But I think the thing that is probably most important to remember is that, it's like this is just day one. This is the first couple days. It doesn't actually matter, probably in practice or in reality. What matters in practice is what happens over the next few weeks, few months. That's the life of the app, not today. And what's really probably important for today, and this is something that I would encourage anyone launching anything to do, is to just celebrate the accomplishment of getting to this point. My wife is incredibly good at this, and we're having a fancy steak dinner tonight at home just to celebrate this, and she makes a big deal out of getting to this point because, especially when you're an independent developer, your family is your team in that way. And if I was working at a bigger company, maybe we would all go out to a nice lunch or go out to a happy hour or something. Like you might have have a cake in the break room. Whatever it is, like you may have something that you would do. But being a one-man shop, like it was, if you remember back to the beginning of this episode, I had my wife push the release button, which was kind of exciting. And then also, we're celebrating it tonight, and by making a big deal out of it, by being intentional about that, I think is an important part of, it's like you can only do so much. And I think we always, I suppose it's parenting advice, but we always talk about in my family about, we praise performance, not outcome. We focus on, the input, the effort, how much effort you put into something, your intention about it. And we try and focus on that rather than the outcome. It makes no sense to have your goal be if your goal is to have a number one app, say, for whatever definition of number one that is. The unfortunate thing about having that as a goal is you have no control over that directly. You can't do anything to make that happen. It may happen or it may not happen. But most of the reasons why it would happen are outside of your control. You say, I want to hit number one on launch day, like if that's your goal. Then the reality is, what if someone else launches on that day and they have a better app than you? You're not going to meet your goal, but you did everything you could, right? Focus on the input. And I'm very proud of the work I put into this. The effort it took, the patience it took. My goodness, there was so much testing with this app update. But by focusing on those things, and it's a hard thing. Like it's so easy to just focus on the tangibles and the measurables because I think that's easy. It's easier to do, and there's a natural inclination to focus on something that's a bit more measurable. But focus on the outcome, or focus on the performance of the work that I did. We're going to celebrate. We're going to hopefully, and then move on from here. And I think that's what I'm doing. That's what I encourage anyone to do. Make sure you manage your expectations, and hopefully that will be enough to have a good launch, and to define having a good launch as things not falling apart when it gets out into the world. Like that's something that you have control over, and something that you can do. So anyway, hopefully this diary was interesting. I know these episodes are a bit different than what normal. Marco and I will be back to our normally scheduled program next week. So if this is not your thing, don't worry. And I will talk to you next week. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you to Linode for supporting the show.